Hello and welcome back to the Chattergate podcast where I discuss and review media. I'm your host, Ranking Thomas Hughes, and today, obviously, I'm talking about a TV show I literally recently binge watched because I'll be bluntly honest here, this episode, when you're watching it, would have been recorded probably like a month in advance. Because it's something I'd literally just finished watching, I was like, I could talk about this show, but obviously there's no point me holding back on, obviously, doing the actual video for it until, I say, right before release, because by that point, all the info's gone out of my brain. Even though I've got notes, some of the stuff that's not in my notes will obviously just disperse in my head. So it's just made sense to me to actually do this episode a bit earlier than it is actually due out. So obviously today I'm going to be discussing and reviewing the TV show Lethal Weapon, the first, second, and third season. Obviously, I said after I did Castle when I finished that show, and obviously recorded the podcast episode, season 4 to 8. Sorry, I was like, okay, that's it for like cop shows. My next binge watch of a show is going to be something that's not a cop show. But my brain did that thing where obviously it saw, I think it was like an Amazon Prime. I saw the Lethal Weapon series. Obviously pop up, obviously like, oh, recommended to watch or something along that line, or CTV on sale, and I was just like, I remember actually really enjoying the first 2 seasons of this, and obviously I never fully watched this third season, and obviously I remember going, okay, you know, I'm gonna have to just Google, go on Amazon itself and see if I can get the box set, obviously for a reasonable price. If it's too expensive, then obviously I wouldn't get it. And about a few clicks later, I managed to get the complete series 1 to 3 box for about £25, which isn't bad to be fair. So I managed to get this bad boy, which contains every single episode of the show. And obviously, I was trying to find out the cheapest option available. And to be fair, I'll get series 2 and 3 for about a tenner overall. But I just couldn't get series 1 on Amazon by itself. I'd have to buy either the series 1 and 2 box set or series 1 to 3 box set. And if obviously I bought the Series 1 and 2 box set, then obviously the price, technically, if I just bought the Series 3 one separately, would have been the exact same price as buying just the big box set. So I was just like, fuck it. Big box set it is. So obviously, long story short, then obviously I just sat through over the course of maybe like 2-3 weeks, if that, the entire series. I mean, I sat through the entire Series 3 over a weekend. I think I spread out the rest of the show over the course of like a good week or two, but as I said, Series 3, because it's the much shorter series, I just bashed through over the weekend and literally finished it as of this morning recording. So yeah, so it's like I didn't want to do another cop show because I kind of felt burnt out. I mean, I did Hudson and Rex Series 1 to 7, and then in a massive binge watch, and I said I did Castle Series 1 to 8 in such a big binge watch. In both of them in within like a month or two, I was done with them, and I was like, okay, I don't really want to do another cop show, but I remember having a good time with the show, so I thought, screw it, I'm going to do it, and it's just easy enough to talk about it. So yeah, obviously I'm going to be talking about the first, second, and third season of this show, and honestly, the first 2 seasons are a prime example of how to adapt another form of media into a series, because the first 2 series, are bang on. They're so entertaining. Obviously, they cast the perfect 2 actors to replace Mel Gibson and Danny Glover, and obviously Damon Wayans and Chase Crawford, I think his name is. Although I've got my notes somewhere. Where is it? Clayne Crawford. Sorry, I was close. I got the second name right. It's just the first name I got wrong. Obviously, those 2 did a really good job of bringing these characters to life and kind of giving a little extra spin to the characters at times. Because obviously, especially when Damon Wayans, obviously he goes full comedic with his role, but does have enough in there to be a bit more, like a family man. And as I haven't seen the films for a long time, so I might actually rewatch the films at some point and have a mental comparison between the show and the films. But as I said, the first 2 seasons are such a great example of how to adapt another form of media right, basically, because there's plenty of times, especially this era, the era when this came out, because this came out 2016 to, I think it was 2018. I don't think it was 2019. It was 2016 to 2018, 2016 to 2019. 16. Possibly say 2018 it finished. So obviously it was over the course of 3 years. And around the time when this came out, obviously this wasn't the only sort of buddy cop type show, whether it's comedy or a serious one, that was being made to adapt a film. Obviously, because around the same time, you had the Training Day adaptation and you had the Rush Hour adaptation. Obviously, the Training Day adaptation, obviously, was actually pretty decent. The only problem was, obviously, it lost its lead actor, obviously, tragically. So, obviously, they had to cancel it, which was the right call, really. Whereas Rush Hour just was a pile of shit. They failed to capture the films perfectly. So this is the best example obviously you have of one of these shows, movies being adapted properly, for the fact that it actually lasted for 3 seasons before getting cancelled. Because obviously the 3rd season was not what people wanted, considering the fact they replaced the lead actor. Obviously, they had the reasons to get rid of him, and they were justified reasons. But of course, doing that, it kind of killed the show. Because don't get me wrong, Series 3 is fine enough. I mean, I think I watched maybe the first couple of episodes when it first came out, and I was like, it's alright. It's not the same, though, as the first 2 seasons. Obviously, it's lost the momentum, basically. And obviously, on rewatch and actually fully finishing this season, I found it started off a bit but as you got further into it, it did kind of pick up a bit. Yes, it never picked up to the same level, but it picked up enough to go, okay, I could maybe go for another season on this, because obviously there's some story choices that could be interesting for them to develop into another series. And, you know, the character of Cole, obviously played by Sean William Scott, who obviously is more better known, obviously, for his time as Stifler in American Pie. He wasn't as great as, obviously, him and the character weren't as great as, obviously, the character of Riggs from the first 2 seasons, but he was different. Obviously, it was the same but different enough to draw you in. And say, as it went along, he started kind of delving into his CIA background. It was actually kind of intriguing, because that's what this show does well. It has these characters, obviously this main character, because they don't really delve too much into the backstory of Roger Murtaugh, but he's always just someone that every now and again you get an episode, maybe that has some link to, obviously, his early days as a cop, but there's nothing like an overarching plot where it's fully delving into his life, compared to, obviously, Riggs and Cole. They obviously have a lot of backstory told via flashbacks. Obviously, with Martin Riggs, the first series, the whole point of his backstory was, obviously, his wife recently tragically dying in a car accident, obviously killing his unborn child in the process, and it was him trying to deal with that and obviously reliving key moments in his life from when he met her to when, obviously, he met her parents and stuff like that. It was obviously him trying to deal with that while having these memories come to life. Whereas the second series obviously delved more into his family time, obviously, especially with his, obviously, mom passing, and his, obviously, dad being very abusive and kind of basically, well, I say kind of, basically is a fucking dick, and essentially kind of like a neo-Nazi type character. And it's obviously delving into that side of his life. And then obviously with Cole, it's more the fact that it's showing off, obviously, the most recent tragic moment for him as well, which is obviously the death of this kid that he met. And then obviously sort of delving into his early days with his mom. So they kind of are very similar enough, because they both have a recent tragic moment, and they both have tragic history with their families in the past. So that's the interesting thing they do with this. Obviously, they do a good job of telling these stories while basically going through your run-of-the-mill cop-type show episodes where, you know, each episode is them solving a different case. There's very rarely any of that sort of crossover with another. The only ones that really cross over with one another is usually the last episode of a series and the first episode of the next series. Those usually follow on enough with a plot that was left from the finale. So that's the only time they really follow on. Most of the time they are kind of like Hudson and Rex, where each episode is basically a different story. But then obviously it does have the every now and again where, like, not necessarily the plot follows on to the next one, more like a character continues on for like an extra episode or so. So that's kind of how this one works a bit. And obviously, in between all that, as I say, they've got these flashbacks trying to explain these characters, trying to flesh them out and show why they are broken, essentially. And as I say, they do a really good job. And I think the only problem I have with, obviously, when they bring the character of Cole in, is obviously, especially Martin Riggs, they do 2 seasons of 2 different sides of his past via flashbacks. But with the character of Cole, they cram it all into one season. They start off with this tragic moment, and after so many episodes, it goes away, and then they start delving into, obviously, his mum being a photographer, obviously taking him from country to country, well, war-torn countries, to take pictures, and obviously get showing the world, obviously, the problems with these, obviously, wars and stuff. So it kind of crams a lot into one season, and on top of that, obviously... Oh, that was my door. Obviously, they have this CIA background, which is obviously something that plays out within the modern plot line with him. And I feel like they should have used that more than all these other stories, because that would have been quite interesting, because that's something they never really fully delved into with Riggs, was his military background. It's more just obviously his family background. I feel like that's what they should have done with the character of Cole. They should have... Yeah, they could have maybe had like a moment here and there where they referenced his family background or a tragic moment. But I feel like having him show off more of his CIA background would have been a lot more interesting for the flashback sequences, because it would have allowed them to show a completely different character to the character of Riggs. So I feel like the problem is they tried to keep too close to that character in terms of how they presented his background. Obviously, so people wouldn't obviously go, okay, it's so totally different to the first 2 seasons. And I feel like that's kind of what killed it a little bit, because as I say, there's a lot there they could have done with the CIA stuff, especially for the fact that a lot of times they keep going, oh, it's confidential, I can't tell you anything about what's going on. Well, he physically can't tell you what's going on, but a flashback would have been interesting to show. And I feel like that's kind of where this show kind of screwed up a little bit, because I feel like they could have had this moment where obviously show this kid dying at the start, obviously to give him his tragic reason, to be coming into the Force, and then they could have followed it up with slowly building up through obviously his past to get to that moment. I feel that's what they could have done with this, and I say that could have been something that they could have spread out over, I say, another season or 2, but I kind of just went, let's just cram some of the key elements straight into one season, and that kind of didn't give it a chance to breathe. Because I say that's what they did with Martin. They gave him this opening segment where his wife dies, and then they spend a lot of times piecing together the puzzle that's set before that, and they kind of try to do the same in the 3rd season, and it just doesn't go as well. I feel like that's one of the reasons that obviously this show just didn't really succeed with the 3rd season. Because I say, love the first 2 seasons, I love the overarching plot, and I had a lot of fun with the episodes, and the chemistry between the 2 leads was just phenomenal. Like, they bounced off each other really well. You got this really unhinged character who has lost his family, and you've got this character who's trying everything to keep his family together, and those 2 just work well together. And then obviously that they take him out, bring in the character of Cole, who's kind of in the same situation, just not lost his family in terms of they're dead, more of lost his family in terms of she's obviously his ex, and he's trying to get back into his daughter's life. So it's the exact same dynamic, just slightly different. And I just feel like they could have probably just gone maybe somewhere different with that character to not be so close to just being, okay, let's just try and make another Riggs character, just not as unhinged. So, I don't know. I said I did like the plots for the first 2 seasons. I like, obviously, it's slowly built up. Obviously, little hints at the death of his wife may not have been an accident, and then say with his dad's stuff, obviously leading to the fact that his dad's alive, and there's a lot of secrets he doesn't know. But so they don't really do too much with the 3rd season's flashbacks, because yes, they explain a bit more about the kid's death, i.e. his brother's still alive and stuff like that, but that's it really. There's nothing really to this. I say even with the stuff with his mom, there's not really much to the bleeding effect into the main story. He's just obviously showing kind of why he's like he is, and it's just like, maybe give us a bit more story in the backstory, i.e., as I say with the CIA stuff to show off the character of Barnes, who's like the kind of the big overarching villain of that season. I could have just done more there personally, but I still feel like series 3 is a fine enough season. It's just they hit peak with the first 2 seasons that it was always going to be hard for people to digest when they change this dynamic for the 3rd season. Because as I say, you've built up this relationship with this character of Martin Riggs. You built up this backstory. You know what he's like, and you're seeing obviously his modern day life kind of spiraling because of obviously these moments, and having all that, and then finally getting to the point of I feel like I know this character. Just to have him taken away is always going to be, I say, hard to digest. Again, it's understandable why they had to get rid of him, because obviously the whole toxic workplace environment stuff that was being going around because of him. But at the same time, obviously, it's one of those things where maybe they should just call it a day. I do respect them for going, okay, we'll try something different here, because series 1 and 2 were well enough watched that we can try something different here. At least one more season to see how people react. If people react positive enough, great. If people don't, then, you know, at least we've tried. At least we've wrapped up the series 2 finale, because that's the thing with it, obviously, because series 1 ends on such a cliffhanger that obviously you kind of needed season 2 to continue on, and that's what you did. First episode carried on with that plot line, and then obviously series 2 itself ended on this big massive cliffhanger that you're like, okay, I need a 3rd season to see how this plays out. And again, series 3 does, but then the end of series 3, they don't really end on this massive cliffhanger, which is great. It's like one of those ones where you can see where they're heading, and yes, you can tell there's another story there, because obviously it's them heading to try and track down Barnes, but using this alias of taking the family on vacation, but both have the exact same idea, and the wife is just like, oh shit, I realise what's going on here, we've been screwed over here. So it's that idea that you can carry on, you can see where it's going to go, but it's still a fine enough ending where you can go, you know what, it's a perfect place to end. Them going off for one last mission, but neither of them are dead. There's no family in danger, and as I say, no one's really in danger at this moment. Whereas I say, series 1 ends with obviously Riggs going off to Mexico, so he's like kind of in danger, so Roger has to go and get him. And then series 2 ends with obviously the Riggs shooting, so you kind of like, okay, is he alive or dead? And I feel like, to be honest, that's what they kind of botched as well with series 3, because the whole point of obviously the opening episode was obviously Murtaugh dealing with the aftermath of the Riggs shooting and the trauma it's caused him, and the fact that he's just kind of, well, he's the broken one now. Like, he's pretty much distancing himself from a lot of people, from work, from family, to try and solve this, obviously, murder investigation. But it's all wrapped up in one episode, and I feel like they possibly could have spread that out over the season. I say either bring in another partner to help him out solve this case, or just up one of the, obviously, other characters to help him a bit more, i.e. the character of, what's her name? I did write it down here. Bailey, because obviously she is one of these side detectives in this show, and they could have easily just had her team up with him for a bit, and then maybe slowly intertwine this new character into it. But I say they kind of just brush over the plot really quick, like, oh, it happened because it wasn't like anything like of a big deal, even though they spend most of the episode kind of building up to it for when it gets to there. It's like, yeah, no, it was just a shooting. It was just an angry kid, and it's just like, I feel like for the fact that it's a big character, you probably could have had it be a proper plot. So I feel like that's kind of what killed it off, because then it was them to an extent kind of brushing away the character of Riggs, obviously, so they didn't have to fully focus. I mean, yes, they could have moments where characters maybe remember him or something, but most of the time, it's nothing. Obviously, that character is completely gone, and there's no talk about him. I feel like after the first 2 episodes, because obviously that's the first 2 are the ones that obviously continue with the Shrink character played by Jordana Brewster, obviously the one who was in obviously Fast and Furious and Heart Eyes. Obviously she, obviously being Riggs' psychiatrist, they keep her in for like 2 episodes, and then that's it. And I feel like after that point, that's when they kind of completely ignore the Riggs stuff entirely, which to be fair makes sense. Obviously, if you're kind of trying to brush away the character, you're gonna fucking just like focus on him a little bit, and then just he's gone. But I feel like for the fact that obviously Riggs is such a big character for Lethal Weapon, that they could have maybe, as I say, spread out a plot line of the third season being obviously the shooting wasn't just a simple shooting. There was more to it. Like someone sent obviously his brother to shoot him and stuff like that. They could have done something basically with it rather than just completely get rid of it straight away. And then as they slowly bring in, obviously slowly try and explain this character of Cole a bit more. But, you know, I feel like another thing where this show does let me down a little bit. I feel like I was spoiled though with Castle, because obviously in Castle you have side detectives, obviously your main crew, but obviously they're the ones that are there just to help out a little bit here and there, and eventually every now and again get maybe an episode or two where they're the center focus. Obviously, and that was obviously Javier and Ryan, and they obviously those two are so fucking good. Whereas in this, obviously you've got Bailey, and don't get me wrong, she's good as well. And there's obviously an episode where she gets full focus, but the problem is it's her partner character, because the first series introduces obviously someone who deals with obviously cartel based crimes, and he's in it for a little bit, and they kind of just completely get rid of him. And then series 2 brings in someone who's meant to be like the face of the NYPD's, like LAPD, sorry, not NYPD. Fucking too much focus on Castle, which is I'll ignore that. But yeah, so LAPD, and whole point of him is he's not a very good cop. He's more of like a model, for the fact that obviously they use him for the poster and stuff like that. And to be fair, they did a lot more with him. I will admit they did a lot more with him as a character. And then the third series just eradicates him and brings in a new character who's obviously played by an actress who was in The Walking Dead and that very short-lived TV show, Obliterated, I think it was, or whatever it's called. The one where it's the first episode. The whole episode is practically like a party after they take down like a master criminal. It's on Netflix. There's quite a few people in it, but yeah, obviously they bring her in, and they don't really do much with her either. So it's just like, if you're gonna have these, obviously these a detective and a partner that's a side character to main characters, you need to kind of keep them around and actually make obviously them useful, because they don't make them useful. They literally make Bailey useful, but that's it. And it's kind of annoying. I mean, they do more with the captain character than they do with obviously Bailey's partners, and that's not me having to dig at the captain character, because he's actually really good and really funny. It's just, I feel like either keep her as a solo detective or actually have a partner who's going to be here for multiple seasons, not just every now and again, and then just completely replace them for the next season. That's kind of like another part where this fails for me. But I say, other than that, I feel like this show nails characters perfectly. Like, apart from side detective character, they nail the characters perfectly, because the entire, obviously, Murtaugh family is entertaining to watch, because it's him trying to use his police trainings and obviously to try and keep his family together, because he obviously got rebellious kids and he's trying to deal with that. He's got a wife who's probably a lot bigger than him in terms of obviously where she's at in the food chain, obviously, because of being like especially in the last series, she's trying to become obviously the DA, obviously, so she's the top dog in the house, and obviously he's obviously trying to focus on us. Obviously he's got a new kid. There's a whole interesting dynamic there of him trying to deal with his family that are always kind of messy. And so then you've got these two other detectives, obviously, let's say these partners in terms of Riggs and Cole, who are more isolated. I mean, Riggs lives in a fucking trailer on the beach, whereas Cole lives in a motel, and they have either had a family or have a family, and they're trying to adapt to this new life. So there's a lot of cool stories you can tell with all these, and it's all entertaining stuff. And so then you've got the character of Avery, who's the captain. He's interesting to watch. Say Bailey's fun to watch. Scorsese, who's the coroner, is interesting to watch, because obviously no one kind of likes him. He's kind of like the one that everyone bullies in the group, and it's interesting to see him. Like, he's not just a coroner. He's obviously like a writer. He's like a director. He's a lot of things as well as a coroner, and that's something interesting, because most of the times when it's like a coroner character, that's it, they're just a coroner. But obviously they try and do a bit more with him as a character, and that's kind of interesting. And then even then, obviously, characters that come dropping every now and again, or have multiple episodes are intriguing enough. I say there's multiple times there. Riggs and obviously Cole have had love interests that come in and shake up the game a little bit. Obviously, you got the character of Leo Gatz, who was in the films, was fucking Joe Pesci, is it? The one from obviously Home Alone. Obviously, he was the character in the films, and obviously they use obviously a more TV actor for this version of it. And obviously he's fun to watch because again, he's another character that everyone hates, but at times they are like, okay, he's useful, but he's still one character that everyone fucking hates. But he's always funny when he comes in. He always brings in like a humorous plot, and it always ends up with him 9 times out of 10 in the line of fire or being kidnapped by someone. And I say it's always interesting to watch. And so I feel like as well, one thing that's good with this is its action sequences are really good. Like for a TV show, I mean, especially like well, since it's an American TV show, I refer to it as a cable TV show. Obviously, I mean, they have a lot of explosions, a lot of car chases, a lot of cars flipping and all that. And a lot of times with these sort of shows, like, that might not be the case. They might obviously not have a budget to do like intense moments like that. But this one like went all out. I mean, fucking the amount of times like cars explode. I mean, there's one scene in the 3rd season. This is the one that I recently watched. I don't remember the most. Obviously, where obviously Cole is trying to snipe obviously this guy in the vehicle. The guy's driving headfirst at Roger, and he takes a shot, kills the guy, but then has to shoot the car to cause an explosion, so it doesn't obviously hit his partner. And when he does it, massive explosion, car flips over and everything. I was like, you know, for a TV show, they did a decent job with its stunts. Like, the stunts are really good in this show. And it's interesting as well because obviously most of the stunts are performed by the younger actor playing obviously the main lead role, is it either Cole or Riggs. But to be fair, they do allow obviously the character Murtaugh to have a few stunts here and there. And I mean, there's one in, again, Series Freaks, the most recent one I watched, where the episode opens with him like giving like this talk to the next generation of obviously police cadets, and he's talking to them obviously about obviously a case back in the day, and he's on about obviously the fact that he did like this move called the Roger, I think it is, where basically it's like a flying kung fu kick essentially. He throws his badge in the air to distract someone, and then comes flying in and basically like Bruce Lee kicks him, and the whole scene is shot in a very funny way, obviously, where it's meant to look like it's the 80s or 70s, but in reality, it's like 10 years before the show, before that, obviously, episode is meant to be set, and it's just like, why the fuck are they looking like they're in the 80s when they're not, or speaking like they're in the 80s? And obviously, right at the end of the episode, when he obviously, well, he tries it twice in the episode. He tries it once, completely misses the kick, and puts his foot straight through a wall, and he tries it right at the end. And I say it's a funny scene when he's flying in the air and actually lands it perfectly. And there's a few other moments with him when he's obviously allowed to jump from vehicles or do car chases. And obviously he's less at times of the physical part of these moments, but they do enough with him every now and again to sort of show that he still can fight as well and still can do these crazy stunts. Despite the fact that the whole point of his character is he has a dodgy heart condition, which, to be fair, they kind of like eradicate that in the last series. I remember it being like a focal point in the first series, and I think it was kind of in the second series, but they kind of eradicate that plot line. I mean, they do a really good job in one episode where Riggs is in a car chase going full speed, and it's causing Roger to the point of he's about to have a heart attack, so he pulls over and takes him to hospital instead of obviously carrying on. And that obviously showed obviously how frail the character Roger was, while also showing how Riggs can actually be a sympathetic guy here and there. Which, to be fair, is something they did with the second series of his character, where they gave him this family dynamic, where they actually gave him someone to love and not just have this character kind of disappear after a few episodes. They gave him obviously a family, and obviously it showed how he could ruin it for himself while thinking mentally, okay, I'm doing this to protect them, but in reality he's kind of just ruining it for himself. And obviously that's something interesting they did with his character, which, to be fair, they kind of then tried to do with the Cole character. They tried to replicate that from the get-go, where he is trying to be a dad. And again, that's kind of why it kind of felt a lot the same as the Riggs character, and they kind of maybe could have done a different approach with that character, but, you know. What else have I got here? I've actually not used any of my notes. I've kind of got off my head here. What we got? I feel like I've spoke about most of it without actually reading my notes. Just say, I remember watching this show when it first came out, and I remember every week watching Series 1 and Series 2, and then I got to Series 3, and I remember watching the first 2 episodes. Maybe was the first episode, at least the first episode. I can say that, at least the first episode. And I wasn't as hooked with it as I was with the 2 previous seasons. And I did the classic thing I always do with these weekly TV shows, where I miss an episode and then they just build up week after week after week. And then by the end of it, I've got an entire season to watch, and I just never get around to catching up. But for the fact that I was binge watching it this time, I just thought, I ain't putting it down. I'm going to carry on, blaze through this, and see how we get. And it wasn't, the last series wasn't as bad as my brain was going it's going to be, but it's still not at that level where the first 2 series were at for me. I mean, to be fair, I did that with like that sort of like Netflix type shows as well, where they released all the episodes at once. What's that show I did it with? Squid Games and Sweet Tooth. Obviously, I remember watching the first seasons of both of them, and then I got to the second series of both and never watched them when they first came out, and both have now finished their run of 3 series, but I've still got 2 seasons worth of the show to watch. To be fair, at least with Squid Games, I did get halfway through, I think, the second series before putting it down. I still need to watch Sweet Tooth, because I love that show. Done all that. No, that's what I was going to say. To be fair, I feel like if this show wasn't an adaptation of Lethal Weapon, if it was just a normal cop show, and obviously they either started with a Cole character, or as I did, still did that replacement character, I feel like it might have not been as hated the third time round. I feel like that's what probably killed this show heavily with the cast changes, the fact that it was Lethal Weapon, which everyone from 4 movies has known it is Riggs and Murtaugh all the way. And I feel like that is probably one of the reasons as well this show got killed during the 3rd season, because of, without Riggs, it kind of, and it's obviously without Riggs and just Murtaugh, it's not Lethal Weapon, really. It's the same if they did the way around. If they kept Riggs, got rid of Murtaugh, like, it kind of ruins that dynamic, because these are the characters that everyone knows. So I feel like if it wasn't an adaptation, it was just like this random cop show that was just made up from scratch without any sort of emotional attachment to previous attempts at it, it possibly may have survived a 3rd series into a 4th. Well, we'll never know, really. I know, to be fair, obviously, I think one of the reasons as well, I'm guessing the ratings were down on the 3rd series because of the cast change, but I know I did read as well about, obviously, David Wayne's obviously wanted to step away after this series. But obviously the producer was like, okay, if it gets renewed, we might be able to convince him to come back for another go-round. So I feel like maybe him saying that he was done after the series also probably could have killed this. Maybe this studio backing it were like, well, if he's leaving, there's no main 2 characters from the 1st series, and people are probably going to hate it even more. So, I mean, I feel like one of the things I do like this show as well is they know how to balance the comedy and the seriousness perfectly. Going back to the scene when Roger's having a heart attack, that whole sequence is meant to be funny, with Riggs fucking pushing the limits of what you can do as a cop and pushing Roger's limits. But then, when they delve into the point when he's like holding his chest, like he's literally struggling with his heart, it then starts going a bit more seriously, and Riggs takes the moment serious enough to say, look, we can get these guys another time. You're the focal point here. We need to get you to the hospital just in case you do have an actual heart attack. And they do that a lot with this show. there's plenty of moments where, as I say, it takes itself really seriously, but then knows how to have a bit of fun with it when someone might say, and the moment's ruined and stuff like that. And I said the other way around as well. There's moments where it has been funny, and it knows how to then turn that moment into a serious sequence. And I do like that with the show. I feel like the balance between comedy and seriousness, kind of like what they did with Castle, and to be fair, Hudson and Rex as well. It shows that they know how to balance it correctly. That it doesn't feel too much at times. Like all the times in this show when obviously Roger's with his family, it's always usually very funny, but there's always a serious undertone to it, and that just works for me. I feel like if it was too funny, it would have been too much. If it was too serious, yeah, it would have been fine. But obviously, to be fair, I'm pretty certain, if I remember correctly, some of the Lethal Weapon films had their comedy moments in them. So I feel like going a serious route with one of these type of buddy cop shows, but also having a lot of fun moments with it, is a good way to make a buddy cop show. Or else you're basically doing like a training day situation where it's just this super serious show. And that works for me as well. Don't get me wrong, I feel like that does work. And I do feel like if you get it right, a full comedy type buddy cop show does also work. But I feel like if you can find a perfect balance between them, that's even better. Because you can have a laugh and you can also have a cry. And that's what this show does. It has its moments. As I say, that there's some really funny moments. Like, for example, the Series 2 finale, obviously, Riggs basically ducks out of his going away party quickly so no one can see him. And obviously he has a heart-to-heart with Roger. And obviously there's a slight funny moment. They're not fully funny. There's a little bit of humour in there with how he first reacts to Roger by just giving him a thumbs up. But then it knows how to shift it into a bit more of a serious moment where he's basically saying, thank you for saving my life. And he's just like, oh, you used to do it all the time for me. He's like, I don't mean just, I mean just overall. Like, if it wasn't for you, I'd probably be dead in a gutter somewhere. And I like that. And as I said, then it just delves into a really serious moment at the end, obviously, where he takes a shot to the chest. And as I say, then obviously going into the next series, it starts off seriousness. And then there's a lot of moments here and there where there is funny moments. Like, for example, there's a scene where he's trying to track down his car, Murtaugh is, and he's like, well, what do you think? He's just going to fall out the sky? And this car just falls out the sky behind him. Moments like that, it knows when to have these little funny moments to take the pressure off the seriousness at times. So kudos to them for finding the perfect balance. So if I remember correctly, the Rush Hour show was just like a pure comedy one, and the Train Day one was a pure serious one. And it shows there, so the Train Day one worked. So it probably could have gone for multiple seasons like this if obviously Bill Paxton hadn't tragically passed away. Whereas I said the Rush Hour one, I feel like maybe because Rush Hour is obviously such a popular movie, and they maybe just miscast their characters and just didn't obviously adapt it properly. That's kind of what killed it. But obviously, I remember that one being pure comedy. So I say perfect balance is always a key with a buddy cop show like this. I feel like that's everything I really want to talk about. As I say, fucking first 2 seasons, excellent. Third series, not bad, just not at that same quality. I mean, there's probably 1 or 2 episodes that I'd say are really good. It's just there's plenty of episodes that I'd say are a step back to the first 2 seasons. But to be fair, I'd say at least it didn't end on a cliffhanger, like a complete cliffhanger. Though I would have liked to have seen them maybe like spend an entire season with them hunting Barnes in, I think that was Ecuador they're going to. That would have been an interesting one. But knowing this show, they would have wrapped that plotline up in the first episode of the next series. Because as I say, that's what they do. They set up something in the finale and wrap it up straight away in the first episode of the next go round to then just focus on a new plot. And I feel like that's probably what this would have done with Series 4. Though, as I say, if they did an entire series and it wasn't even set in LA and it was just them kind of going rogue on it, that would have been interesting to watch personally. And I feel like that would have pretty justified one more go round to then end on a fully happy moment where there's no plot set up, there's no plot left unresolved. It's ended. But if they wanted to do more, they could come back. But there's no moment where people go, okay, that I can see a plot coming here. This is a cliffhanger ending, or this is a semi cliffhanger ending where it's, as I say, it's one of those ones where I can see where this is going to go. So they could probably just gone one more go round and just, as they ended on that moment of, we're done. But if people react differently to this series than the last, and the cast want to come back, then we can look at a possible fifth season. But as I feel like the cast change from Riggs to Cole probably hit the nail on put the nail in the coffin for a lot of the fan base on the show. I mean, a lot of the reviews I read on IMDb is that's their main complaint. And as I say, Riggs was good, and I feel like obviously going to the character of Cole afterwards is a downgrade. But as I say, I feel like Sean William Scott did a decent enough job to keep you attached. But as I say, it's still not the same. So yeah, I feel like that kind of covers everything I want to say. So rating wise, I'll give series 1 and 2, so I'll lump them together because it's a lot easier. I'll give series 1 and 2 a 9 out of 10. Like, quite a high 9 to be fair. It's not 10 out of 10 quality, but it's close. So I give it like a high 9. And then when it comes to series 3 of Lethal Weapon, I would give it an 8 out of 10, kind of like a low to mid 8. It was getting there. It just wasn't there yet. I say another series or two, maybe with the character Cole, flesh out his CIA background a bit more, and the emotional attachment that you had for Riggs might have developed for this character of Cole. So obviously with that, I say, because of the fact that I said like a highish 9 and mid 8, that gives Lethal Weapon series 1 to 3 an overall rating of 9 out of 10. Obviously, I said when I did Castle and Hudson Rex that I'd try and pick a favourite episode, and I looked through the list of episodes, obviously for all seasons, to pick one. And to fair, for series 1, I'm going to give it to the pilot, because when you make a pilot for a show, you want to draw people in, you want to hook them, you want to make something that people will watch and go, you know what, I can come back week after week and watch this. Because how many episodes was in series 1? 18 episodes in series 1. Because series 1 had 18, series 2 had 22, so they went more with that, and then series 3 went down to 15. So obviously, you've got 18 series already planned. You want that first episode to be that good that people go, you know what, 17 more episodes to go, I'll stick around for this. And for me, that's what this show did. First episode was that great that I was just like, you know what, these characters are interesting. I could sit through a season on this. Don't get me wrong, the last episode is definitely a close one to claiming great episode as well, because obviously it's a really great episode that ends on a very serious note. But I'm going to give it to that first episode just for hooking me on the show as an overall. And then series 2, I'm going to give it to episode 10. Though I did like the finale, I did like the final moment. It was like very heartbreaking and sad, considering obviously you know where it's going to go after this. But I'll give it to episode 10, which is the Christmas episode. Because though it's fucking weird watching Christmas episodes not in December, because I watched I'm a couple of months out from December now when I'm recording this episode, and I say there's one Christmas episode per season, and like any of these shows where they do Christmas specials and you're doing a binge watch of them, it's always weird watching the Christmas one. I say in the middle of, I don't know, if you're watching it in the middle of the year, if you're watching it in July, it's always weird watching these types of episodes then and there. But for me, this one was really good. I mean, it obviously has a lot going for it, and I really liked its ending moment where both Roger and Riggs are under siege, but both them obviously call up their respective spouses and obviously have a heart-to-heart with them to say, essentially, but not to say I'm not coming back, but obviously give them a moment where they can mentally probably think, hold on, is that them saying goodbye? It's a really good moment because they're both at the point of they're possibly going to die. Riggs is obviously in his truck getting shot at. Obviously, Murtaugh is currently in his house with his neighbour getting shot at. And there's a lot of moments there, and it's really intense. I mean, there's the whole scene in that one where obviously Murtaugh ends up in a strip club and his wife's on the phone to him, and he's obviously like trying to like blank the fact he's in a strip club, but then there's a lot of things keep happening that keep pointing out that he's in a strip club, and his wife's like, wait, what? And obviously Martin has to go in to fucking deal with the whole situation, but then has to leave his girlfriend's son in the car outside the strip club, and then has to explain to her at the end why he took his her son to a strip club. Like, there's a lot of fun moments there, but there's a lot of really good tense moments as well, which do make it stand out. So finale is definitely a close one for me. So I love the idea of, obviously, Murtaugh's at the breaking point because his wife's been kidnapped, and Riggs himself would do anything as well to save her and also stop his dad, who is the one who's done the kidnapping. So those two are definitely the prime one, the big ones for me in this series. But as I say, I will give it to the Christmas one, because as I say, there's not the sewing of this death scene. That's it. That's an actual death scene. This is his character dying. So as I say, I'll give it to episode 10. And then series 3, there's two choices again for me in this one. Episode 11 is a very fun episode with obviously Murtaugh stuck in a hotel the entire time, kind of doing a Alfred Hitchcock style episode. And then you've got obviously I think it's the last episode, episode 15, where all the CIA stuff finally comes full circle, which is a lot of fun to watch. And I say there's a lot of implications that kind of allow these characters to finally have their moments in the sun. And I feel like I really like that. So the only thing I didn't like with that last episode though was the start of it, which is obviously like 2 hours or something stupid, like 4 hours I think it was, before the main plot line of the show. But I can look past that because the rest of the episode was fun enough, and it ends, as I say, on that not full cliffhanger that is really fun, and finally gives them all essentially a happy moment. And considering the last 2 seasons ended on sour notes, I'll give it to this one for wrapping everything up in a nice little bow. I think that's everything, actually. So, yeah, obviously, if you've seen any of the 3 Lethal Weapon seasons, obviously, put your comments in the description. Put your comments in the description below. Put your comments below, and obviously, you can check out the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Audible, Amazon Music, etc., etc. And yeah, obviously, I'd say, because I'm doing this a bit early, I don't actually know when I'm fully released this episode, I won't say which Man-Eater series one's next, or which one I did before, because I don't know when this episode's going out just yet. But yeah, either way, I hope you enjoyed this review, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
If you like what you've seen, don't be afraid to throw us a little like and subscribe. That's always very appreciated over here. And, well, I'll see you on the next video.